Shalom, first and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahushai, Ba'Hashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles, a great millstone who are teaching this truth in sincerity. And a shout out to Yakim that's out there on the four quarters of the earth proclaiming this truth. Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahushai, Ba'Hashem Rakakadash, Bracha them. So, out here another week prophesying the downfall of America, Babylon the Great in the scriptures, or also known as Basra, our daughter Babylon. Has many names, but it's a combination of all the wicked kingdoms and rulerships. This one is the ultimate evil rulership. As you know that we were never ever given freedom, but rather emancipation proclamation, which just pretty much means that it was a transfer of ownership. Kind of like, what's going on here with the situation in Syria, as the United States done what it does best. It had went ahead and abandoned the Kurds just like they did back during 1991. The only difference is that Syria actually protects its Kurds, unlike what Iraq did to the Kurds after the war had ended. See, when the war had ended, after George Bush told them that any attempt to overthrow Saddam Hussein, they would have American support, Iraq had slaughtered them as well as Turkey, So they got slaughtered on both sides of it. The only difference is now the Syrian Arab army can actually do their job and come in and protect the Kurds, And of course, all the Daesh terrorists and Takfiri terrorists are all safely guarded by the United States going into Iraq. See, because they got a snafu return to base order. They had failed to overthrow the government of Syria, most of all because Turkey came in. I mean, the United States doesn't want to have any more damaging, relations with Turkey, even though they've threatened sanctions against Gomer. But you and I both know what sanctions do. It's just all small talk. It just means that they've pretty much declared war. And this is what's caused all the nations to hate the whore, and want to burn her with fire ultimately, and that's going to happen. They're tired of America being involved with all these things, and they don't like having being told how to run their countries, because the United States always goes in, and pretty much destroys countries and sets up his base. He doesn't stay too long, because if he did, he'd still be in Petra, But nonetheless, though, the Most High has a grievance with this place, because look at how America was conquered to begin with. It wasn't really conquered. We were slaughtered, and we were slaughtered on just promises, treaties. Very similar to the treaty that they tried to broker with Turkey, huh? Isn't that funny? They tried to broker a ceasefire with Turkey, and Turkey went ahead and did some air attack raids, So, Turkey already knows anyways, because they're Amalek to begin with. Those are Amalekites that are in the governing position, and you have mostly Edomites over there, so they already know the tricks of the devil, because they are the devil, So you got Satan divided against Satan, pretty much, And it's not just there, it's all around, And, of course, like everything else, though, they're also sending more troops into Saudi Arabia because of the false flag. And the reason why I say false flag is not because Yemen didn't do it. It's because they're blaming Iran for it. See, whenever you blame another country or you use it as a means to make war with that country, that's a false flag, because you're falsifying evidence when, in fact, the Houthis of Yemen claim responsibility for the attack to begin with, because of this pretty much war, this, now over 10 years, because America's been bombing Yemen for a long time via drone strikes, and now they've been using Saudi Arabia, especially for the past 5 or 6 years, because remember the list of countries that they wanted to go into, but the last on the list was Iran. So they feel that they weakened Syria with an attack on Syria. They knew that they was never going to conquer Syria, and plus the scriptures tell you the least of the flock shall draw them out into this war. So we know it's Amalek that ultimately destroys the Damascus government in the scriptures. And we know that it's them also that pretty much launched this war against Iran. And that's when this whole thing is brought to a close. And everybody knows that the United States backs Amalek, So, and they're tired of the U.S. and the Israeli state, All the other countries are on the side of Palestine. And are against the declaration of the Golan Heights and Jerusalem being called the property of Israel. They are very much against it. So this is the beginning of the nations hating the whore, and ultimately what they're going to do is they're actually going to agree with Russia to burn this place with fire, And look at it this way, though. We know what kind of arsenal Russia has. So do you think that these other countries really seriously want to be burned by Russia? If you had to choose Russia or the United States, if you were living in the region of Europe, who are you going to choose? Who has more firepower and who's closer to you? And you and I both know, though, that the United States doesn't have the firepower that Russia does. Those missiles, Tomahawk cruise missiles, didn't even make their mark when the United States said that they would be sending smart missiles over into Syria. And Putin kind of laughs and said if they're smart missiles, they would hit terrorists and not government positions. So we all know that this whole thing has been a hoax, that the whole war on terror was really about conquering Afghanistan and Iraq. So those would be bases to train terrorists to go into the other countries that they wanted to invade. Just like when the guy had said, so we're going back to Iraq? No, it's a lot worse than that. There was 7 countries. All those countries have been attacked, and now you're starting to hear about Iran. Pretty much they took over Libya. They trained their terrorists from Afghanistan and Iraq to go into Libya because they had all those years, because remember, the War of Terror was declared in 2001, so by 2011, those terrorist groups were brought in to Benghazi via Egypt, because you got to remember, Jose Mubarak had stepped down because those terrorist groups, aka the Muslim Brotherhood, were brought in. Of course, they were safely guarded, brought in through Saudi Arabia into Egypt, took over Egypt, and then started to make their moves on Libya. And it wasn't long after that that the U.S. and the UN, NATO, had destroyed Gaddafi's defense forces to where Al-Qaeda had taken over. That's what they were calling it then. Of course, they now just call it ISIS, or Takfiri, or Daesh. All of them are terrorist proxies of the United States to destabilize the region. And that's pretty much it, though, is that they've destabilized the region, and that's why all these other countries that were once allies with the U.S. are starting to see that pretty much, that if they back that, their terrorist groups, their proxies are going to be destroyed anyways, and it doesn't really benefit them in any way. Look at the coalition teams now, man. Did they really have the go-ahead in Iraq back in 2003? Now, Russia didn't intervene back then, but once they decided they was going to move into Syria, that's when Russia said, oh, no, you're not. And so they had to find a new way of fighting the war by sending in these terrorist proxies under the guise of, oh, we're fighting ISIS, we're fighting these terrorist groups, when they were really just protecting them. And you can see that. You saw the U.S. military pulling off with the Daesh terrorists that had escaped the prison jails, pretty much because the United States was a convoy. Of course. Who do you think trained them? They were also training them in Jordan. Don't forget about that. Iraq and Jordan, Saudi Arabia. So all these terrorist proxies. Syria was never fighting a civil war. They were fighting a proxy war. Bashar al-Assad knows this, and he has conveyed that on many occasions. He had also conveyed to the Kurds that if they make any deals with this devil, that pretty much they will betray them, and that they won't have the protection, that the only protection that they really have is the Syrian Arab army. Bashar al-Assad knew that the United States would turn tail and run eventually, especially once Gomer got involved, and Russia got more involved. So, of course, they found the Coke cans left in the military bases, Russia had already pretty much taken control of some of the old military bases, and of course Syria, the Syrian government, the legitimate government of Syria. So, pretty much what's happening, though, is, as it says, Magog would thou be a guard unto them. So, pretty much what's happening, though, is this kingdom of Esau Edom is crumbling down. As you know, Russia is an Edomite country, just as the EU is and all that, and yet they're against the United States and Amalek. Pretty much Israeli state. They're against all that, so you and I both know, though, that what does this mean? That Satan is divided against Satan. That his kingdom ain't going to last much longer. So I'm going to read out of Habakkuk, starting in chapter 3, verse 3. Yahweh came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran. Selah, his glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. In modern day Teman, of course, is talking about America, because, of course, many of us are coming to repentance, and, we always know that Basra, Teman, or Dedan, these are all code names for Esau, Edom. And his brightness was as the light. He had horns coming out of his hand, and there was the hiding of his power. Before him went the pestilence, and the burning coals went forth at his feet. He stood and measured the earth. He beheld and drove asunder the nations, and the everlasting mountains were scattered. The perpetual hills did bow. His ways are everlasting. So, pretty much, though, this is when Yahweh shall make his presence here. And everybody will know who he is. They will know that he's not a so-called white man, that he is, in fact, a very dark-skinned man, having hair white like wool, feet like undefined brass as if burned through a furnace. They're going to know what he looks like. And they're going to see the eyes as the flame of fire, as the scriptures tell us in Revelation 1. I saw the tents of Cushan in affliction, and the curtains of the land of Midian did tremble. Was the Lord displeased against the rivers? Was thine anger against the rivers? Was thy wrath against the sea? And thou didst ride upon thine horses and thine chariots of salvation. So pretty much, man, you're starting to see chariots pop up everywhere. That means he's getting close to this return, to this day, when he shall gather his elect from the four quarters of the earth. A great portion of us are here in Babylon the Great, but we're everywhere. And this word has gone out, so it's not very far from this. The mountains saw these, which is talking about the militaries of the earth. You're starting to hear it all the time, UFO sightings. And they trembled. The overflowing of the water passed by the deep, uttered his voice, and lifted up his hands on high. And pretty much then, this is the gathering. The sun and the moon stood still in their habitation. As the light of thine arrows they went, and as the shining of thy glittering spear. Talking about the thermonuclear destruction that went forth to destroy this place, Babylon the Great. And also, the wicked kingdoms of Esau, Edom. Because Tel Aviv is going to be destroyed, and all them other places are going to be destroyed also. It's a destroying wind, a glittering spear. Thou didst march through the land in indignation. Thou didst thresh the heathen in anger. So these things are going to thrust through. They will make their mark. When the sirens really go off, it's going to happen in 1 hour. This place is going to be destroyed in 1 hour. Kind of like the longer version of "You dropped a bomb on me." That's what it's going to sound like. Sirens going off everywhere, and you're going to just hear missile silos, but they won't be able to defend against. They went forth for the salvation of thy people, even for the salvation with thine anointed. So he's going to gather his people out of here as this happens. Thou woundest the head of the house of the wicked by discovering the foundation unto the neck, Selah. Thou didst strike through with the staves the head of his villages. Thine came out as a whirlwind to scatter me. Their rejoicing was as to devour the poor secretly. So this consuming fire is going to be destroying 1/3 of the earth. It tells you that in Revelation 9, which I think that we'll have time to go and get that. When I heard, my belly trembled, my lips quivered at the voice, rottenness entered my bones, and I trembled in myself that I might rest in the day of trouble. When he cometh up unto the people, he will invade them with his troops. So that martial law is going to be here. And that's another reason why you're starting to see power shutoffs, by PG&E. These are practice runs for the Army After Next, because that's what Jade Helm really meant. Army After Next. Who is that Army After Next? The UN. And why is the UN going to come here? Quite simply put, the U.S. troops will be in Saudi Arabia, ready to fight that war, because he's going to destroy the Northern Army. Although the fig tree shall not blossom, neither shall fruit be in the vines. The labor of the olive shall fail, and the fields shall yield no meat. And you're starting to see that, man. You're starting to see a famine coming, man. A lot of things did not get planted this year because of all the floodings and everything. Now, these Edomites were not able to plant such pleasant things. The flock shall be cut off from the fold, and there shall be no herd in the stalls. Pretty much, man. These animals, they're also starting to turn on these Edomites, man. You're hearing that all the time. Yes, I will rejoice in the Most High. I will joy in the power of my salvation. The Lord Yahweh is my strength, and he will make my feet like hen's feet, and he will make me to walk upon my hind places to the chief stinger on my stringed instruments. And who are these stringed instruments? Well, who's playing the song to begin with? You know, this song, I mean, for years you just heard Christianity and all of its lies, but now you're starting to hear the song. So who are his stringed instruments? Well, the 144,000, the house of David. So you're starting to hear these stringed instruments. You know, we're those stringed instruments that are coming. You know, and this is happening now, you know, because, you know, we're being pretty much gathered up. You know, the elect are coming to remembrance as to who they are. We've been standing on our feet and doing this for quite some time, you know, and the heathen will mock at us like what happened last week. Of course, because they haven't heard this song before. Nah, they've always heard that stretch Christianity that everybody's going to be saved. If so, then why are all these judgments coming if everybody was going to be saved? If everybody could get saved? No, it's only for a small elect. And, you know, we're hated not just amongst the heathen. We're hated amongst our own people. 2/3 of our people hate us for what we say. No, they would rather be likened unto Esau than be likened unto Yasharahla. That's the sad part of that. Revelation chapter 9, verse 15. And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of man. So this is talking about by way of them thermonuclear missiles for that 1 hour when Babylon the Great shall be destroyed by thermonuclear destruction. You know Russia's ready, as well as the rest of the world are ready. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, meaning 200 million nuclear missiles. And I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, which are the nuclear missiles, having sat on them, having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and in brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. There's only one way to describe this, because of course, what they're describing are the nuclear missiles. They're describing the heads of these nuclear missiles. By these 3 was the third part of men killed by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouths. So again, you know, it's talking about them nuclear missile siles. For in their power in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails were like unto serpents and had heads, and with them they do hurt. You know, and that's just it though. It's that, you know, all countries are pretty much nuclear ready. Even Pakistan's nuclear ready. Iran is nuclear ready, even though it's a last thing. I mean, of course, you know that the missile defense system is always a last resort, you know, because, of course, they will push that red button because they're tired of this, you know, especially after Damascus gets destroyed. In that same hour, America's going to be destroyed for what happened to Damascus. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails like unto serpents and had heads, and with them they do hurt. And the rest of the men that were not killed by these plagues yet repented not of their works of their hands. And they should not worship devils and the idols, gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, neither can see, nor hear, nor walk. You know, people still want to hang on to Christianity, even though we've been out here to prophesy that America will be consumed by nuclear fire. You know, and that, you know, the image that they've been worshiping, Caesar Borgia, is not the true image, not the biblical image. No, man, they don't want to repent. Neither they repented of their murders, nor their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. You know, because our people don't want to repent. And you fucking even say that word, repent, man. You know, they get in an uproar about that because they believe the lies, once saved, always saved. And they believe that they're supposed to forgive their oppressors, you know, when it says forgive their brother. They don't even know who their brother is. But their brother are the ones that are out here on the street corners prophesying, you know. And the ones we're supposed to forgive if we, you know, got into it with a brother just over stupid stuff. We're supposed to forgive our brother, you know, of things like that, you know. You know, we don't, you know, when it comes to error, you know, we definitely correct them. And the Most High is spewing out those that he doesn't want. You know, that's why we all have to, especially one man comes, man, we got to make sure that we don't get spewed out, man, you know. And of course, you know, devils may come up, but you have to make a choice, man. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when one of these devils comes up? Are you actually seriously going to try to fight him when you're the only one standing? Or are you just going to be calm, you know? Well, of course you're going to continue prophesying. And what he couldn't stand is that I was a bliss to him. I was a bliss, and that, I just continued. He was like, you didn't see that part because he's in front of it. So that's why he got in the back and tried to get into the camera, because he thought this would be about him. He thought I'd put some sort of title on my video like the Sakari group does. Edomite gets word of this. Edomites have been getting word of this, man. Of course they are. They're a wounded animal. They know that, there is, though, God that loves everybody. Because if that were so, then why is everything else failing? Nah, man, they're revolting back to what they once were, which they have always been. Atheists. They don't believe in this. They definitely don't believe in the Most High. They don't follow his statutes or commands. They claim to be one nation under God, but yet they don't follow even the simplest precepts like thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not steal. They can't even honor that, man. Everything about this place has been lies and theft. That's why it's not the least bit surprising, that Bethel Church gathers with the city of Reading, because the Bethel Church, the mafia of this place, gathers together so that way they can find a new way of wreaking havoc on the homeless of the houses that they destroyed in Keswick, because of the government energy bombs, that PG&E, who really works for Esau Edom, really works directly under the Rothschilds, but yet they're saying that they cut power just because of wildfire prevention. We'll take a good look outside if you could. I mean, I don't know if it really shows on here, but there's clouds everywhere. But remember that fire, that campfire that all of a sudden got out of control. And now they're starting to use words like illegal camping. Who's that referring to? Illegal camping. Think about it. It's the war on the homeless that they always wanted, to weed out the weak, the Georgia Guidestones, to reduce the world population to 500,000. That's the bigger agenda here. And they're doing it slowly but surely. That's why, wildfires are popping off, unlike any that we've never seen. I never heard of a fire tornado before car fire, but they exist now. The first time they started popping up was like in around 2015. Around Mount Lassa, they were burning a lot of stuff. Fire tornadoes, The winds of the fires got so bad that it started spinning around like a tornado. They call them fire tornadoes. But all this is engineered. Everybody knows about the HARP program now. Nobody believes the official story. Well, let's just face it. A good portion of people are ignorant and others are not. There is an awakening happening, because we've been those pipers. We've been those stringed instruments of the Most High, echoing, to where the Edomites have also gotten hold of this, and they're telling their people that, there's been people for years. We were the first to say it, but there's been people for quite some time now saying that America is Babylon the Great, that this is the final kingdom before the Most High gathers his elect. They'll actually use scriptures like that. Why? Because we are. So they have to make Christianity look somewhat like, so they can bring in their lies. But yet at the same time, though, we can disprove just about all their lies, John 3:16 is easy to disprove, Their version of it, which world just means cosmos, which world means people, because Yahshua has always been the world of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. It's always been about his people. He come to save that of which was lost, his sheep. His sheep hear his voice. Who's that talking to? Can the heathen actually hear his voice when he's not even dealing with them? No, but Christianity wants you to believe he's now dealing with the whole entire world, which makes no sense whatsoever, because why did he create us to be separated? Think about that, it's only logical. But you see, that's just it, though. Christianity doesn't teach logic. Christianity teaches lunacy, And these people are just nothing more than belly fillers, They want your money, And they teach the same thing over and over again. You're not learning anything. Man, I can remember back in the days when I used to go there, and it's just, man, I wasn't getting anything. It's like, that's the same reason I left years ago. Wasn't learning anything, and pretty much already knew that all Christians are hypocrites, man. I see these people fulfilling their lusts and their desires. Well, I mean, we could just get into other simple things like the dietary law. None of these Christians actually refrain from eating pork, or shrimp or lobster or shark or any of those things. They eat all those abominable foods because, God said that all the food is clean. I even had that argument with my mom, who's an Edomite. Yes, my mom's an Edomite. My bloodline comes through my father, of course. But, she tried to argue that, and I said, no, he didn't. He didn't say that at all. And you bring out the obvious scriptures where the meat is still defiled, and that all this has had nothing to do with making pork all of a sudden clean. You can't take an unclean animal and make it clean. You're not supposed to be eating those things. But you're not going to learn about that in Christianity. No, only we're going to tell our people to repent. The hour is coming. You can see all these nations turning against the whore, hating the whore, and, they're not going to back the whore. None of these other places even back the United States against Iran, and they know who started this war with Iran and who's starting the war. The least of the flock, Amalek, drawing them into this war. And that's what's happening. And, of course, the only ones that are really backing Amalek is the United States. It's superpower, which is now being shut down. Because, of course, the rest of these countries, they don't want America there. Man, America has been the very reason for the instability of the Middle East. Pretty much, though, they know that the Middle East would be stable if the U.S. wasn't there. And that's why they pretty much have turned tail and run. Just like they did in Desert Storm, Pretty much, They pretty much took out Saddam Hussein. Well, they didn't take him out all the way, of course, because he launched a war against the Kurds. So they screwed the Kurds just like they're doing now. The only difference is the Syrian Arab army is protecting those Kurdish units. Because the United States only protects the terrorists that they create themselves. Al-Qaeda, Al-CIA, that's pretty much what it is. ISIS, Israeli Secret Intelligence Services, another acronym for Mossad. That's pretty much what this whole thing's been about. Of course, because they want to control all the oil. And the reason for Afghanistan, well, shit, that's where the drugs are. Look at all these Edomites addicted to drugs, man. Now they have a new way, vaping. Yeah, that's a new way, Of course. Because their kingdom's falling apart. This truth has gone out, and it has hurt Esau. And that's why you're starting to see, the Apostles' channels. I mean, just before they took down Apostle Gabar's channel, they were messing with Apostle Tahar's channel as well. They didn't take that channel down all the way, but for a while, he couldn't even host new videos on there. He had to change, he didn't change, but he had to go through an alternative place to upload, just like, I always had to back up. That's what you got to do is back up everything. But once they take down the channel, though, you won't find the older videos anymore. So you better hope that you have downloaded them to your computer. Because when things start to happen and you're starting to see lockdowns and you won't be able to get into the city, that's why they're pushing for the Real ID. Well, shit, they've already made it a law. You try to renew your license now, man, you either take the federal non-compliant ID or you take the Real ID, And pretty much they're going to do away with the federal non-compliant ID, where it's nothing but Real ID. And that's all going to be replaced by the RFID implant, the tags, They've been putting it in animals for the longest. Only a sick fuck would want to put a tag into an animal to begin with. But that's what Esau Edom is, man. That's what this devil has always done, Just like he put branding marks on us, but, it's his final branding mark. Because that's what mark means, to brand someone. And what do you think that computer chip is? To be hooked up to his database, to where he's always watching. Big Brother is watching you, right? Like the stuff that that you know about in 1984. 1984 has been more of a survival guide. But, they even have pictures that say 1984 was never supposed to be a survival guide. But yet, it's very much what's going on now, Thought police, think about it. Thought police and doublethink. What's that? Oh, well, anybody that questions the media, is now like, the thought police will tear down that video. You try to take video clips of how you can catch these newscasters in their lies, man. They'll flag that video, they'll take it down, say that's hate speech, which to hate something is to not like it, so, they have that, so you got to be careful what you word these things, And most of the time, and I've had it happen to me on numerous occasions, that the videos that I get flagged or taken down are very old videos. Like I had 2 strikes, about the Toys R Us closing. Everybody knows Toys R Us closed, but that's the one I got the strike for. Oh, and for using Last American Vagabond. He claimed copyright, so fuck that asshole. If I find videos of his, of course I'll listen to the information, but then I'll go ahead and take that information, I'll look it up. That's why you see me in my sit-downs looking at the anti-media, looking at Zero Hedge and all the other articles he reads from. Well, shit, I can do that. I can read the news. And hey, I can do one better. I can actually bring the biblical scriptures and put that in there. So, pretty much the house of David's been built and the sifting has begun. You're starting to see, though, that the ones that are going to stay in this truth, no matter what, they will come out here, no matter what the weather is. Even if they can't drive, they will walk. I did that last year. I walked. I walked over here in the snow just to do a lesson. No, you won't find those other bootleg camps doing that, and all those bootleg camps are just pretty much set up. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to proclaim this truth while we still can. Get it while you still can. Download safe to your computer while you still can. Because we're not going to be out here much longer. They're shutting this shit down. Eventually they will. But until that time, you better repent while the grace period's still up. It ain't going to be up forever. So for all that, I want to say, Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Bashim Rakakadash, Wa Abab Abal, Bracha Dam Jehovah Elect, Shalom.